Good morning and welcome to DIY Do It Right. Now this is the programme that is dedicated to people just like you, people who enjoy making and creating with their own hands. And of course the best way to do it right is to see how the professionals do it and hear how they actually manage to make all those wonderful things happen. And later in the programme we're going to be talking to Marty Thornton, who is a professional artistic painter. He's going to be showing us how we can transform our kitchen cupboards with paint. But first, let's chat to Louise de Brookley, who is an interior designer, and she's going to tell us today how we can transform our everyday household objects on a very low budget and with very little skill. Good morning, Louise.
Hi, Devon.
You've got a marvellous arrangement of things here, and these all look like sort of things we'd find in our house, I know, like these little pots and this glass, for example, but you've made them look absolutely marvellous. So how do you actually do that?
Well, basically, I keep an eye out always for a bargain. I don't throw things away. I'm very reluctant to throw things away because they always come in handy. And I do believe in, using budget type things, because I think a lot of people are quite intimidated by the idea of going into artist shops because these things cost so much money. The little pots of paint and the brushes and the glazes and the stipple and the gold leaf, etc.
But I know you can buy things like this in hardware stores. I've seen this. So
That's right. In the big DIY shops, they have huge ranges of these. Obviously they're just meant for testers for your wall, but they do just as well, when you're using arts and crafts, especially if you're not exactly sure what colour you want. And for today, for example, I've just been demonstrating little tiny pots like this, because it means if you go wrong, you paint it the colour you don't like, fine, just get rid of it, don't use it again, or repaint it. Well, that's the great
thing. This is beautiful.
thing.
It's got a lovely sort of golden sheen. I mean, how do you get an effect like that on
Well,
on a pot?
basically, what I've done is I've painted the whole pot in one of these tester pots in a nice eggshell traditional blue. And then on top, I've just used quite a coarse sponge and, in fact, a gold leaf paste, which is very manageable and easy to use. And I've just buffed that across to give it a nice sheen.
And has this got a very durable finish? Will it last a long time, or is it something that's going to come off on your hands?
It's decorative. You're not meant to be using this sort of thing in the dishwasher, etc. It's not going to come off on your hands. Once it's dried, it's completely wipe-proof. Like I say, you wouldn't want to be scrubbing it or putting it in the dishwasher. What I've done a range of pots, and also using the same sort of colours from this range, I've just done what they call a cheats verdigris.
Well, this is marvellous. It really gleams. It looks like gold almost, doesn't it?
That's right, it is. It's basically a gold leaf paste, and it comes in a little tube like this. It's much more manageable than gold leaf. That's something that you would work up to, if you're restoring frames or something like that. But gold leaf,
and that's very difficult to work with, isn't it?
Gold leaf is, yes. It's very thin. It breaks easily. You get it stuck all over the place. I usually end up with it on my arms, on my elbows, etc. This is much easier to use. You can just apply this to a little stipple sponge, such as this.
Could you use an ordinary domestic sponge for something like this? Could you cut it up?
Not really, because domestic sponges tend to be a lot softer. If you had a coarse type of sponge or a natural sponge that is dry, but this is a specific stipple sponge. They're quite cheap to buy in craft shops anyway. And you would just basically apply a little bit of the gold leaf paste onto the sponge.
Right.
And then, according to what you're going to do, for example, this cheats verdigris, you just buff it gently across the surface. And of course it catches on the highest ridges, giving a nice relief effect.
And if you put too much on, is there any danger of that? How would you sort of take the gold out from, say, inside there?
Obviously you can turn around and remove some of the gold, but once it's on, it's more or less on, really. But the point is that if you're starting with little things like this, you're experimenting and you get the feel of how much to use, how much not to use, etc.
So should we be thinking small first, go for small projects?
I think so, definitely. I think people that go in and rush in and spend a fortune on equipment and then it all goes pear-shaped and it puts them off for life. Much easier to start with cheap tester pots and little arrangements, for example, a little bit of florist foam, pop it in there, soak it in water, and that's a really cheap, quick way, for perhaps setting on the table. I've just used a little bit of gravel.
Well, it's a lovely gift for something like Mother's Day, isn't it?
Yeah, or just setting it around the house. This, again, this is a fresh flower, so that would need to have some water in it. But if, for example, you were using, say, the lavender, that dries itself naturally over time and gives off a lovely sort of fresh fragrance, as you're aware.
I can smell that from
here.
And
that's great to sort of dot around the house, little pots like that.
What I particularly like is this. Now, this looks to me like it was once an ordinary tumbler, and I presume that's exactly what it was.
Yes, basically I had broken the rest of the set. I started off with 6 and I was down to 1. I never used it. It sat at the back of the glass cabinet. And a few weeks ago I was having a barbecue on our one day of sunshine, and I thought it'd be nice to have some little lights dotted around the garden. So all I did, and this is very easy, again, not necessarily at the craft shop, candle shops, all sorts of places, you can buy these little glass beads.
Do they have to be glass?
Yes, I mean, that just happens to be the way they're produced. They're in glass. You don't tend to get them in plastic. You get a much better reflection off glass anyway. And I just arranged them in this case, it was just a band of blue and a band of clear.
Starting from the top or the bottom? What would you
I started from the bottom because then the next layer up is partially supported. And you just give time for the glue to dry on this and the glass, put them together, and they bond tight. And then, you know, try different colours. And if it's an old glass that you weren't going to use anyway, what does it matter if it goes wrong?
That's true.
There's
and
no tears
I suppose you
shed
could just
over
let your
it.
imagination run wild with you, couldn't
That's
you?
right. Just the point is to have fun and just try different things, as I've done with the stained glass effect.
Well, you've certainly brightened up our day here in the studio. I mean, it looks absolutely gleaming, and I really must thank you for coming in, because I know you're a very busy designer.
Thank you.
And that's all from Louise at the moment, but we're going to be hearing more from her later in the programme. But after the break, we're going to be hearing from Martin, who's going to show us how we can decorate our kitchen cabinets with paint. Now, for most of us, specialised painting is a daunting prospect. But today in the studio, we're very lucky we have Marty Thornton with us, and he is a professional artistic painter. And he's going to show us how we can transform our kitchen doors very easily and very simply. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Devon.
Now, you brought in a kitchen door as an example for us, haven't you?
Yeah.
And it looks absolutely marvellous. It looks like you've actually transformed a wooden door into a piece of fabric.
Yeah, well, basically, this piece of fabric was the inspiration for the door. You need to start off, if it's a melamine surface, you need a primer.
What is a primer used for exactly?
Basically, to give the paint a key. That would be your start to paint this door.
So this is for the paint to actually stick onto?
Yeah, to adhere to give it like a key.
And how long does it actually take to prime one of these kitchen doors?
Oh, about 5 minutes, Devon. You can do it really quickly. It's just so easy to do. It looks harder than it actually is.
And you can buy a quick drying primer, can you?
Yeah, it dries in no time, about 10-15 minutes. You're ready to go for the next coat.
And I see you've brought a board in for us here to try out this paint technique. And you think I can do this, do you?
Oh, yeah, it's just so easy. I'm going to show you.
So what's the first step in preparation then?
Well, first of all, you need a spirit level, which most people have got at home. You mark out with a pencil, lines going down and across. I've used for this one the actual width of the spirit level.
Oh, so that makes it quite simple, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just so easy.
So once you've marked out your lines with pencil, I presume, not pen, or does it matter?
Pencil, because like a biro would bleed through. With a pencil, if you're making any mistakes, you can just wipe it off.
So you've marked out all your lines, and then you've put something like sticking tape on this.
Yeah, this is actually masking tape. This is a low tack, which is very important.
And what does low tack mean?
Well, basically, if you're going to peel it off at the end of it, you don't want the paint underneath to come with it. And if it's the high tack masking tape, it will. Because
that'd be a disaster, I presume,
yes,
taking off and losing all your paint effect.
Yeah.
So you've put your primer on, you've made your lines on the board for the pattern, and then you've masked off the areas that you don't want the paint to go onto, presumably.
Yes.
Okay. So then what actually happens? You're going to use some form of paint. Is it just ordinary household paint you use, or?
No, it's not. Well, it is, but we've just doctored it a little bit. It's basically a Dulux test pot, which you can get at any home-based places like that. Do it yourself. These come to about £2, so very cost effective.
So you're saving a lot of money already, aren't you?
Yeah, but you pick a colour, any colour. I'm just doing this for demonstration. The next is PVA glue, which you can get at any art shop.
Oh, I see.
It's cheap. This one comes to about £3.50. You're not going to use all this.
So what type of proportions would we be talking about with this?
I use 1 part paint to 1 part PVA to 1 part water. In equal amounts.
And you just mix this in a bucket, or
no?
Do you need as much as that?
Do this studio.
Oh, right.
This little jam jar, in actual fact, filled with the paint, would do a kitchen.
Do a whole kitchen.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I think my kitchen would probably fit into that bottle, actually.
Yeah.
Quite small. So there you have. So you made a nice mix, and with the paint and everything else. So what's the next thing? This is the hands-on bit, isn't it?
Right, yeah.
This is the bit I'm nervous about.
Yeah, it's really easy, Devon. Right, you just put some paint on the brush, wiping off the excess, because we don't want it to run everywhere. Then you just apply, using nice even strokes. But what we're going to actually do is take off more than we're putting on.
And how do you do that?
With a dry brush.
Okay.
And then you just...
Again, does it need to be an expensive brush?
No, these are really cheap, Devon. In actual fact, the whole set I've got for £2.
Oh, well, that's looking marvellous already. It looks like fabric, doesn't it?
Yeah, it just gives it this worn-out, distressed, aged look. Do you want to go?
Yes, let's have a go. I'm dying to get my
Okay.
brush in this pot here and have a go. I used to make models of Tracy Island when I was a little boy, and I haven't done anything like this for a while now.
Really?
So, let's see. So just straight across like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice even strokes.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it a good idea to wear an apron when you're doing something like this?
Yeah, I would do.
Because I'm a bit of a sloppy worker, I'm afraid. Okay. Does that look professional enough?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
okay. Now you just soften with this brush.
With the
but
dry brush?
Basically, taking off.
Okay. Nice even strokes
Yeah.
on this one, like that. Okay. And if you get sort of a brush...
Try and work it into the edges. See where there isn't any paint.
All right, like that. And does it matter if you get a hair on there at all? Or?
No, you just pick it off,
Just
which
pick
with
it
these
off.
cheap brushes you're going to get.
Okay, marvellous.
Just
Now...
Working the edges like that.
Oh, so it really has to be dry then, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're basically taking off more than you're putting on.
So it's a good idea to experiment on a little board before
Yeah,
you
well,
launch
you
into a
know,
whole
like-
kitchen.
Basically, get a door and play around with it for a while, and when you get the effect you want, then just go for it. But don't be frightened to experiment.
I suppose that's the key word, isn't it? Don't be scared of DIY, really,
No,
isn't it?
yeah, that's...
So here we have the paint on the board now. I'm dying to see what happens next. You're presumably going to take the tape off, aren't you?
Yes. What you would do as a rule is work from the bottom and work your way up.
Right.
And then by the time you get to the top, the bottom will be dry.
And then do you get a glass of champagne at the end of it? Do you sit back and say,
yes. Yeah.
well...
So the next
let's
stage
all will
would
be
just,
revealed now.
pull off. Where we've taken this off a little bit premature, it's bled a little bit through the masking tape. But as I say, as a rule, we would let this dry to the top before putting
fantastic.
masking.
And what about the down strokes as well, the down stripes?
It's exactly the same, Devon, which I'll demonstrate for you now.
Do you have to then let this finish completely, then turn it around and start doing the
Yeah.
pattern the other way, in the other direction? Oh, that's...
Exactly.
Yeah, that's looking really, really great. I don't know if you can see that. It's actually beginning to look like fabric already. And you can presume you can do all sorts of paint effects like this, can't you?
Yeah, well, this is not the only one. This is just one that I've brought in to show you, which is quite simple. But for the whole range of effects, you use exactly the same mix of paint for everything.
And the same materials in general, then?
Yeah.
So it's the same materials for the whatever paint effect you want to do. And
For aging, dragging, basically, is this one mix, which is so simple.
and this is called... Is this dragging? Would you call
no,
this?
no, I'd call this distressing.
Distressing.
Distressing, but we're masking off and doing it in just certain areas to look like the gingham.
And how do you actually achieve sponging? Because that's another effect that I always hear people talking about.
Sponging, well, it's a little bit, I'd say, it's not used so much now. You know, it's more these distressed effects that people are going for.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
And you've got a couple of examples down here with you of sponging and... is that dragging you've got
No,
down
one
there
of
on
them
the
is
kitchen door?
to make look like tiles, and the other one is just a distressed door.
It's very impressive because it actually looks like tiles in reality, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So now if you need to make a note of all the ingredients for this exercise, I'm going to be giving you this list right now, so please make a note. Now, if the surface is melamine, you're going to need some primer. You will also need some brilliant white vinyl silk or white eggshell, a bottle of PVA glue, a test pot of any colour of your choice, a set of cheap brushes, J-cloths, masking tape and some Dulux clear cut. And that is all I'm afraid that we have time for in this show. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Louise, and thank you, Martin, for passing on your DIY tips. And remember, if you're going to do it yourself, then don't forget to do it right. Next week, I'll show you how to plaster your bathrooms. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.